Hey, it's Juck.
So Juck over with Menace to Sports did a video that I watched in totality the other day. But he said something that caught my ear because a lot of the spirit of what he says, I wholeheartedly pledge allegiance to.
The reaction is like this because it's 4 in a row. And nothing needs to change about this, in my opinion. This game can always be just as important as it always has. It can mean just as much. We cannot allow everything to be stripped away from us in college football because they change the formats around us. The things that have always meant so much to us, the traditions, the stadiums, the uniforms, the helmets, the rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. And you certainly cannot come out and try to devalue this game when you have lost 4 in a row. That is the softest looking thing I've ever seen in my life.
So I hope he's wrong. Because if he's right, then he's really right.
Let's get it. I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship. Something stupid is coming out of his mouth. I don't know. Maybe it's just my age. He needs his vote pulled immediately. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name. Let's talk about something good about Justin Fry. What are you doing? Season of dreams. Ohio State, my guys, are either the best or the second best program in the history of college football. This guy is a bonehead. They love him. I question your judgment as an adult. I really do. I was a total hater. I know that for a fact, and I just don't get it. Get us back our sleeves and say, bring me that. That's the one I want. And welcome into Juckonbucks on a Thursday. We got a lot to get to today. We've got portal news. Buckeyes get a win. Buckeyes take a loss. We got some Bucks, some Vols, a curious decision by Coach Ryan Day and Justin Fry that has everybody talking about. That intro right there was your boy on Tuesday night on Josh Pate's show. How about that, man? I've had some wild things happen since I started this show. That one took the cake, man. What a holy crap moment. And I'll walk you through how that happened, tell you how that came about. So many of you have been riding with this show for quite a while and really taking ownership of it, which I absolutely love, and I can't appreciate you guys enough. I got so many of you reach out to me. Even some of our Oregon fans reached out to me after seeing that, which was really cool, man. You guys make this a lot of fun. I love it. But what Josh was talking about, he said a lot. It was like a 15-minute segment. He disagreed with some of my thoughts. He agreed with others. But my mission was accomplished, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And I have some additional comments about that segment. But that segment was about the game, and that segment was about big picture rivalry stuff. I want to start today talking about the game at hand, the Vols and the Buckeyes, because we're just 2 days away. 2 days away from the first playoff game in the history of Ohio Stadium, the Scarlet out. We got the new lights. Have you seen these new lights? Look at these lights. Ooh, that looks slick. I have finally successfully flushed the negativity from the game, from everything else in the back of my mind. Like it's out. It's all about the game for me. I'm ready to run through a pastel orange wall. We've been talking around college football since this thing was announced about how amazing these on-campus playoff games are going to be. And we're here. Like we get our first one tomorrow night when Indiana travels to Indiana to take on Notre Dame. They're going to be amazing. They're going to be amazing. But the forecast for our game keeps getting colder and colder. Tennessee releasing photos of themselves practicing inside. Everybody was laughing at them, but that was just part of the practice. They are practicing outside as well. And it's chilly in Knoxville. It's not in the teens, but it's probably going to hit into the teens on Saturday night. I don't really think the weather is an advantage at all for Ohio State, but I do think it adds to the special of the game. Extreme weather. Think about the games you've been to in the snow. If there was a weather delay for lightning or something, like the games where there is inclement weather always stand out in your mind. And the ticket prices keep dropping. They're dropping a ton, and that's surprising me. There was a part of me that felt like last week, maybe a week and a half ago, when I was contemplating going to the game, I was like, maybe I'll just buy the tickets. I know that the prices are going to skyrocket, and if I don't end up feeling like going, I'll just sell them. I bet some of you guys probably did the same thing. I hope you're not in that situation. because the price has plummeted for the tickets. The market's totally crashed for it. And these tickets are now going to probably get in price is going to be like $100, maybe 120 when the game starts. Usually that's a very bad sign for the home team. So why are the prices taking such a nosedive? It's three factors. One, it's the cold, man. It keeps getting colder and colder. And that kind of cold really takes a large swath of potential people that might go otherwise and just cuts them out. All the elderly folks, most of the children, which cuts off all the parents with children and families that want to go. It takes away a lot of the people that aren't diehards who might have otherwise gone just for the event experience of it. Cuts them out for sure. And then you got, in my experience, women. A lot of women are generally colder. I know my wife was giving me crap about the cold when I was talking about going to the game. I'm sure other people, there's a lot of dudes that are cold too, but a lot of times my wife, maybe I'm just talking from my own personal experience. My wife, she's cold, but there's something about being in that stadium when it's really cold. Not just that stadium, any stadium, where I feel like there's a certain sense of camaraderie with everybody in the stadium because you're all so damn cold. It's kind of why I was mad that the Browns are going to a dome. Now, 45-year-old me loves that the Browns are getting a dome. But I miss it for the younger generation because those games in the extreme cold, I just remember them all, man. I remember them all, and they're just a lot cooler. I'm big on vibes, and that stadium vibe when you're all kind of suffering together but enjoying the game, it's something neat. The second thing is what our buddy here on this show points out.
You're looking at a spot here where you've got a fan base that's decided, like I told you guys last week,
right?
They're going to Pasadena. They're going to play Texas down in Dallas. They're saving their money. And their gamble is, hey, we don't have to buy. We don't need to buy these tickets. I'll tell you this, George.
Now, that is the George Plaster Show. Those are some dudes from Tennessee. I'm going to play something else that they had to say in a minute here. But I went through that exact conversation with my wife. So, babe, should we go to this game or should we roll the dice that they make it to the Rose Bowl and go watch the Bucks-Ducks rematch in the Rose Bowl, which I priced out. It's going to cost about $3,000 to go do it. Or should we potentially push it even further and maybe take that trip to Dallas, or just wait and see if they make it all the way, spend the big bucks, go to the national championship? So I went through the whole thing. The third thing is what I talked about with Dylan on Monday, and it's the thing that sucks the most. And that is that this is one of the weirder times that we've been through in a long time as Buckeye fans. The massive letdown, losing 4 in a row, the way it happened, the team that we played, the record of the team that we played, everything about it has left us in such a weird state of affairs as we head into these playoffs. And there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of doubt. So all those three things added up, the cold, gambling that we might get through the next round, or feeling doubt about the regime, have made for a lot of these tickets being available to the Tennessee fans. And the price is going down. Then on Tuesday, Jim Knowles talked. Jim Knowles, the Buckeyes defensive coordinator, who I've often talked about this guy, that I just love listening to him talk. I mean, there's not a lot of fire, pizzazz, super laid back, gruff voice, kind of monotone.
Here are the plays we made. Here are the plays we didn't make. How do we get better and improve? And we're also going to talk about, hey, you remember, we had a game that wasn't so good this year. You remember how that felt when everybody was pointing the finger at you? And they can nod their head and say, yeah. I said, well, go pick up one of your offensive buddies then. That's what you do. You've been there. So go lift up somebody else.
Slurps his coffee the whole time he's up there very loudly. But listening to this guy talk about his defense just gets me pumped up. And I got so pumped listening to him. And then I started seeing more about the Tennessee takeover. The Tennessee takeover. They're going to come up here. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. They change the name. Look at this. This is Apple Maps. Apple Maps, that's the shoe right there. And it says Neyland North. This is Wikipedia. It's got nicknames for the shoe, the horseshoe, the house that Harley built, Neyland North. So all that and the Tennessee takeover stuff, pride is on the line here, guys. And I can't be a hypocrite. I got my tickets. I'm going to the game. We got to get to the game. We can't have this. We absolutely cannot have this. I told myself when I started this show, I started the post-game show, if I'm going to commit to doing it, I have to do every single one. This one's going to have to wait for an hour till after the game. I'll set it up for my son's place down in Dublin. I don't care. I got to get to this game. There is just no way that we can allow these guys to walk in here and make us look like idiots. We made fun of Notre Dame after Georgia came up into Notre Dame and humiliated them, looking like they took over their stadium. And because Notre Dame was so humiliated by that, in 2023, when Ohio State was playing at Notre Dame, they made a very concerted effort that Ohio State fans couldn't get those tickets, and they did a really good job. Ohio State was not prepared for what was about to happen for this one. A lot of Tennessee fans got tickets. How many? Well, it sounds like a whole lot. And we got some people who have weighed in on that as well, including our friends over at the George Plaster Show. Let's take a listen to their estimates.
Something or other, it was Instagram or something. He popped in and said he talked to somebody at Ohio State, his counterpart. They're expecting north of 30,000 Tennessee fans in the place.
But when you say take over the shoe, like, what does that look like to you? Because I'm very interested to see what that actually looks like.
To me, I said a third of the stadium, which was about 1,000 Tennessee fans.
I'll tell you this, George. Tennessee gets close to half the crowd in there. Those people are going to wish they bought those tickets. Randy Boyd, again, put up on a social media post that he's hearing north of 30,000. I think it's going to get higher than that.
Good Lord.
I know several people that.
Here's the thing. Ohio State fans are freaking crazy too. Okay,
Exactly.
Like I know that they act like
Twitter
Tennessee's
doesn't
the
get. That is the part they don't get. They've been talking all sorts of smack, man, and it's true. Ohio State fans are in a funk. There's no doubt about it, and it's also true that Tennessee fans have not had any success for a long time, except for they had a big win against Alabama a couple years ago. An awesome scene in Neyland Stadium. One of the best I've seen in my life, really. Like an amazing scene after that game. Ripped the goalpost down, took them over to the river, tossed them in where the Vol Navy has all their boats. Cool scene, awesome win. But outside of that, by the way, they got the number one after that win. Short-lived. I think they were there for 1 week. But outside of that, it's been 25 years of not much. They've never been to the playoffs. If we put ourselves in that situation, you know damn well that we would take over somebody's stadium too. That we're known for this, right? And there's more of us, a lot more of us, like double the number of the Vol fan base, if not bigger than that. But they're super motivated. They're super happy to be here. And people call us spoiled. We can't look like we're spoiled. And this is what this will look like. Seriously, it'll be a bad look. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I got to go. I encourage any of you guys that got $100 laying around to get there. I'll be in section 15A. I'll buy you a beer in the concourse. Hit me up on Twitter. Let's get down there and let's make this a wild atmosphere. And every one of us that's there is one less of them that can be there. I know a lot of Buckeye fans are unfamiliar with the Tennessee fan base. They're a great fan base, and they are a lot like us. They really are. We've only played them once, 1996. Peyton Manning, Eddie George. We aren't neighbors. And again, they've not been prominent on the national scene for a very long time. My kids have no idea about Tennessee. They're talking about ripping the goalpost down at Ohio Stadium, tossing them in the Olentangy. They've got little maps drawn out. They're really cute. You know, all this stuff with the maps. And like, listen, they got me good. They got me good. Like I'm feeling it. They did it to make us mad, and I'm very mad about it. But they got a good thing going. I went through the list last week of all the coaches that they've been through from the Philip Fulmer era to now Josh Heupel, and I won't rehash that list of massive incompetence, but it seems like they got it right with Josh Heupel, former Oklahoma quarterback who was the Oklahoma offensive coordinator, fired by Youngstown's own Bob Stoops, eventually gets a head coaching job at UCF, does really good at UCF, wins like 28 out of 40 games, or maybe even a little better. Then he was hired by Danny White, the AD over at Tennessee, to come and take over the Tennessee program. And he did it relatively quickly. And this year, they came into the year, first year of Nico, thinking, if we can get it rolling this year, that'd be great. But definitely next year, looking forward to Nico. Nico, this is his second year. And they get things rolling and go into Oklahoma in week 4. And a really emotional game for Josh Heupel, though he handled it like it wasn't. You could tell afterwards that it was. An emotional game heading back to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was ranked 15th in their first big game at home in the SEC, and Tennessee played so good. Their defense looked absolutely dominant. They only won the game by 10 points, but it may as well have been 40. It was so lopsided. And Tennessee at that point in the year, I was thinking, man, this is definitely a national title contender, like for sure. Now, they played the 3 standard cream puffs this year. Chattanooga, 69-3, Kent State, 71-0, UTEP, 56-0. Then they played their 8-game SEC schedule, and they also had one ACC game with NC State, who was ranked 24th when they played them. But let's recap their season real quick. They started off with the 51-10 win against NC State. That was their second game of the year, their first power conference game. And NC State ranked 24th. That seemed like a huge win at the time. NC State finished 6-6, so not so much. Then the Oklahoma game, 25-15. Then they lost following that Oklahoma game, 14-19 at Arkansas. Very exciting game, but that Arkansas team, not very good. They had no business losing to that team, and I get the feeling we have a game like that too. The following week after Arkansas, they played Florida. Florida was pretty poor. That might have been the first game Florida started the turnaround. They did finish the season pretty good, and that might have been the first week. But Florida ends up taking them to overtime at Neyland Stadium. Tennessee wins 23-17. Now, after that, it seemed like they were probably not going to stand a chance against Alabama the following week. I certainly picked Alabama to win that game, and it was a sloppy game. It was at Neyland, but Tennessee pulls it off, 24-17, and then they followed that up by a 10-point win against Kentucky, a couple of score win against Mississippi State. Then the big showdown with Georgia in Athens. It was Georgia's first big game back home of the year. They played a lot of big games on the road. Tennessee got off to a really big start. I thought at the time that Georgia was ready to be put away and that Tennessee was going to get them, particularly the way that game started. But in the second half, Georgia imposed their will, got it done, and I believe they won by 14. It was like 31-17 or so. But after that, they closed out the season with one of their rivalry games, their in-state rivalry, Vanderbilt, 36-23. So to cap it all off, you had 2 ranked teams, Alabama and Georgia. They win one, they lose one. Their second best opponent after that win, right? So the win against Alabama would be their best win. Their second best win would be either Oklahoma, Arkansas, or Florida. You decide who you think is better out of those 3, because it's definitely not Kentucky, Vanderbilt, or Mississippi State. And what I'm getting at here is these guys had a very weak SEC schedule. Nothing against them. I think they're a really good team, but that's a weak slate. It's a very weak slate. It's not as weak as Texas is. Texas only played one of the big dogs in the regular season. Georgia played them again in the conference championship, but Tennessee had a very weak SEC schedule. And against that schedule, they averaged 25 points a game, and they allowed 19.25 points a game. Ohio State, 9 Big Ten games. Michigan State, 38-7. Iowa, 35-7. lost to top 5 Oregon 32-31, beat Nebraska 21-17, lost to top 5 Penn State 20-13, beat Purdue 45-0, Northwestern 31 to whatever that was, and then top 5 Indiana 38-15, and then the loss in the game 10-13, inexplicable. So that's 270-110 for Ohio State against the Big Ten. Tennessee 200-154 against the SEC. Tennessee averaged 25 a game, Ohio State 30 points a game. Tennessee gave up 19.25, Ohio State 12.2. A lot of Tennessee fans complain that their team plays very sloppy, and boy, are they ever. And I don't mean sloppy like that 3 sizes too big jumpsuit that Josh Heupel wears on the sidelines. I mean penalties. Ohio State incredibly clean, tied for the 8th best for fewest penalties in the nation, 4.3 for just 40 yards a game. Tennessee ranks 131 out of 134. Very undisciplined, 8.5 penalties a game, 70 yards. This team has surrendered 819 yards in penalties on the year, almost 1,000 yards of penalties. And get this one, Tennessee's in luck because there is not a single team this year that's been called for a holding penalty against Ohio State. I'll say it again. Not one team was called for holding against Ohio State this year. Well, there was one holding call. It was against Michigan State, but it was offsetting penalties, so it didn't count. Can you imagine that? That nobody held an Ohio State player the entire year. It's like they match up with Ohio State and they say, we might as well play this one really, really clean, guys, because, it's the Buckeyes and all. That's amazing. But a ton of talk about this Tennessee offense in this Buckeye matchup has been about the offensive tempo that Tennessee plays with. And the Buckeyes have been practicing a lot for that tempo. Jim Knowles confirmed that was all the talk on Tuesday with the players that talked with Jim Knowles, and they seem to be very ready for the tempo. It didn't seem they were ready for it against Oregon, even though Jim Knowles said that his defense was designed to be the fastest play calling defense in the country. He told us a story about David Cutcliffe, the head coach at Duke, back about 10, 15 years ago when Knowles was his DC. And Cutcliffe, his orders for that defense were, we want to be the fastest play calling defense in the country to compete with offenses playing fast. So that was his initial design of the defense, to be able to call plays fast. And Tennessee can pile up a lot of plays per game when they're really maximizing it and getting you on your heels. So this brings up our first point of contention. And I watched the All 22 film breakdown from the coach's film room on Menace to Sports. If you guys like that kind of stuff, it is a tremendous way to sit there and listen to a college football coach break down film. I love it. But we had a commenter on one of my live shows last week from Tennessee, a Tennessee fan, a nice one, classy dude. But his comment was, Tennessee's going to play 11 defensive linemen in the game against Ohio State. And I even brought the comment up, and I kind of chuckled, and they were making fun of him a little bit in the comment section. And wouldn't you know it, he wasn't lying. That All 22 tape against Georgia, they rotated in 12 defensive linemen. And I'm not talking late in the game. They played garbage time. I'm talking the second series. It was a whole second wave of dudes. And then after halftime, they were bringing in a third wave of dudes. And they were getting the same results. Wreaking total havoc. A lot of talk about when we compare the Tennessee defensive line to the Michigan defensive line in the last couple of weeks. Both very good defensive lines. But the talk was, Tennessee, they're strong, but in a different area. They're strong on the edge. Michigan's strong in the middle. And I heard that repeated over and over and over again. And it is true that nobody has an interior defensive line in the country as good as Michigan's, in my opinion. Tennessee's is damn good in there, too. I mean, nasty dudes, just nasty dudes. They're going to give these guards all they can handle, for real. And they go deep. It's a bit intimidating. It was something to watch, I'll tell you that. They obviously got a great player on the edge, too, in James Pierce. And that only exasperates any potential issues that the Buckeyes are going to have on the inside. Not to mention, he's a speed edge. It's all speed and all bend. And that's the type that Donovan and Fryer have struggled with. So the Buckeyes offensive line has its hands full, for sure. There's no doubt about that. These guys are serious, serious. One of the big concerns about the Oregon game for the defense, particularly the defensive coaching, when we came out of that game, well, two things. One, they weren't getting lined up fast enough. And two, midway through the third quarter or so, the defensive line for Ohio State was so visibly gassed that they couldn't even get down in their stances half the time. Just gassed out because of the pace that Oregon was playing with. Now, knowing that Tennessee is going to play that way, how do we combat that? You would think an obvious way would be to spell them. Bring in your second wave. Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry. Bring in the two in the inside, the next two up, which would be Caden McDonald and I believe Edric Houston right now. I feel amazing about those four guys. I would love to see that. So, what does Jim Knowles have to say about it? He was asked.
Michigan held the ball against you. Is there any thought, I mean, you play, say, Iowa, and the backups get 20, 30 plays, but then you get in these quote-unquote big games, and the other players don't play at all. Just, is there a thought to mix that up going into the playoff?
You have to, I think as a coordinator, you have to, and I'm sure Coach Day believes this too, you have to trust your coaches. I mean, Coach Johnson's been doing this a long time. There's no one else we would want to make those decisions. So, I think there's a natural tendency of coaches, I've been around a while, that, when times are tight, to go with those guys who have been in those situations.
That last part, the last part he said right there, is exactly why orders need to come from headquarters and not stay out of the way. That needs to be part of the game plan right off the rip, not just, do what you do. To any of your position coaches. We've seen this so many times. We just saw it at Oregon. And I'm stunned that they're not stepping in right away and saying, listen, we need more depth here. Don't just stand there and make that decision in the moment. Make a plan. How you're going to play this second wave of guys. I'm stunned by it.
We'd always like to play as many guys as possible, but those decisions happen at the moment. And I know, and I think everybody in this room and all our fans know that Coach Jay is going to make the best decisions for the team and the program.
I know that he is going to make the best decisions that he thinks are the best decisions. But I think that both Jim Knowles and Ryan Day know that the best decision is to play more depth. And if they don't, and they end up losing this game because that defensive line is gassed out because of tempo, the way we saw them in Oregon, and they haven't been rotating, and they didn't play their second dudes, I mean, help them. Like, somebody help them out, right? Because it's going to be, if we thought that it was loud after this game, imagine this game and another one on top of it because they didn't do that. It's something that they clearly should have learned their lesson from in Oregon. So he could be totally BSing and throwing everybody off the scent, right? And they're definitely planning on playing that second defensive line a ton. Again, when we talk about Caden Curry and Caden McDonald, these guys would be starting this year. Like, they're starting quality guys if Jack and JT went to the NFL. When we look at Caden McDonald, that dude, NFL future, super stud for sure. Edric Houston, I think right there with them. Obviously, he's young as heck, but man, powerhouse. It's concerning to me. It's concerning. That's the only concerning thing of the game, though. That's the only thing I'm concerned about on the defensive side of the ball anyway. Their offense, led by quarterback Nico Iamaleava. We've talked about him most of the year. He was the $7 million man a couple of years ago out of high school. The biggest illegal deal we've ever seen that everybody knew was illegal, but Tennessee crossed their power T's and dotted their I's. And that's what they call that T, the power T, the power T. But they were able to make that $7 million deal in a way that it was not an enticement to play football. Nico, tall, slender, he's fast, not really a runner, but he certainly can. He has, I believe, 330 yards rushing this year. Will Howard has like 120, so considerably more rushing yards than Will Howard. Jim Knowles highlighted how fast. He said faster than people think. And he's got a cannon, an absolute cannon, the type of quarterback that can throw a frozen rope, right? Like drive it 30 yards down the field and it never gets more than 8 feet off the ground. Fun to watch guys like that, unless they're passing against your team. But he's awesome. He is great at the RPO game, and they basically have a run-pass option every single play. Jim Knowles said that they run it as it should be run really, really well. Nico's great on rhythm, good long ball. He's great hitting guys down the seam. He is not great off platform. What we talk about the modern quarterback style of play, that's not him. He's a classic style of player. He needs his feet set. And when you get him moving and get him off of his spot, not so good. Muddy up the pocket, not so good. That completion percentage drops way down. Nico on the season, 2,500 yards, 65% completion percentage, 19 touchdowns, 5 picks, rush for 300 yards. Dante Thornton is their deep threat. Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton are both like 6'5", two of their receivers. And Thornton, 25 balls with a 25.9 average yards per reception. That's a serious deep threat. Of course, everybody knows about their stud running back, Dylan Sampson. This guy's excellent. Maybe the number 1 back in the country, maybe the number 2 back in the country. Depends who you ask. But I'm asking myself, what does a Tennessee win look like? I don't think they can beat the Buckeyes with Dylan Sampson. I think he'll get his yards. Against Georgia, he had like 20 carries for 100 yards. Against Alabama, 25 carries for 140, right around there. And that's fine. They gave him his yards, but it's the explosive plays that they need to win. They need those explosives from Nico down the field. And if Ohio State can keep them from getting those explosives, I think that they win the game. All right, now for the Buckeyes on offense, of course, the big talk is about the offensive line. Ryan Day said Monday what Dylan and I discussed, and we interpreted what he said as, we believe that Luke Montgomery was going to be playing at left guard, and then Austin Sareveld and Tegra Shabala were going to be rotating at right guard. He clarified that on Wednesday.
So I think
Tegra would remain starting as the starter at right guard, because it felt like that was maybe the spot that started the last conversation for the previous 3 weeks.
I think it's a good point. I think you're going to see Austin kind of going back and forth. I think Luke has been at left here, left guard during these last couple weeks of practice. Tegra stayed at right, and that's kind of Austin will be the swingman because he's done both, and so I think you're going to see a rotation at both spots.
Joey Kaufman.
Okay, so Luke at left guard, Tegra at right guard, and Austin rotating between the two. Donovan Jackson at left tackle, Josh Fryer at right tackle, Carson Hinsman at center. And what was essentially being asked there was, to open that question, was Tegra at right guard has been the most glaring weak spot. Why is it that the change is being made at left guard? And Ryan just said, I think it's a good point, but he didn't really answer the question. Maybe they don't feel the same way about Tegra as everybody else. It seems fairly obvious that Tegra has been playing very bad to everybody, right? It's just blatantly obvious. And later on, Dylan had a follow-up about left guard. Here's Dylan's question.
Or is this more about just to clarify?
Dylan Davis, tell where he's at.
Just to clarify on Luke Montgomery, so you talked about that swing guy. Is Luke in time to start potentially if things go well today? Is he going to start at left guard in this game?
We really haven't talked about probably the starter yet, but they're going to roll and see how today goes, and then we'll kind of decide who's going to end up taking the first snap.
You mentioned that Luke's been close to pushing for playing time and getting on the field. Was there anything that he's done that all of a sudden recently he made another jump to get onto the field, or is this more about just trying something to find your?
I think it's been a steady increase over time, and now he's got to go put it on the field.
All right. So people very, very nervous about the potential of this rotation with Austin Sehraveld rotating in at left guard, at right guard in a playoff game. Particularly when Tegra has looked not so hot, right? He's just looked very unaggressive. As the competition has gotten stiffer throughout the year, Tegra and Austin Sehraveld have both regressed quite a bit. Luke Montgomery, he's never started. You've never seen him start. What I'm getting at is they're in a spot, man. They're in a huge spot. What are you supposed to do? I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't know what the right answer is. You could start Luke Montgomery and you could start Austin Sehraveld at right guard. You could do that. Leave Tegra on the bench. But again, Sehraveld's not been much better than Tegra. So my thought is, what if they're not really rotating, but they're putting Luke in there to see if maybe Luke can surprise them and get it done, because he's not obviously done enough to earn a start yet until before today. Maybe he can surprise them and get it done. Maybe they think the upside is more than Austin and Tegra could get them on their own. Let's just give it a shot. And we'll have Austin in the mix and we can just plug him in if there's, if it's a disaster, if Luke clearly can't handle it or if he's not ready. Maybe they want this going on because they're looking at the freshness of those bigs up in the middle for Tennessee. And they're saying, these guys are going to get worn down, our guys. Let's make sure that we can spell them a little bit with Austin, give them some more breaks, give them some more confidence when they can come on the sideline for a series and we can talk them up. But again, I don't know what the perfect answer is because you're in a bit of a spot. It's their own spot. You should have 7 guys that can play offensive line, but the starting left tackle is now playing, the starting left guard is now playing left tackle in Donovan Jackson. The guy that they want to be playing left guard is now playing center for Seth McLaughlin. So it's not an excuse. You should be able to get through that. And I think they will. I just got faith that they will be able to do what they need to do. I know, again, everybody's mad. I am too. The last game, and it makes you think, like, how could those people that called that game make this work, scheme themselves around this with a nasty edge rusher like James Pierce and some beasts in the middle, and this situation going on at guard when you've got Donovan on one side and Fryer on the other, who struggle with speed edge rushers. What is there to do? They're going to get it done. They're going to get it done because this same coaching staff coached the first 11 games, not just game number 12. And I got faith. Now, the Buckeyes have intentionally, artificially slowed down the pace of play. I think what we're going to see is them pick up the pace of play, which I can't wait. This was one of the things I was so excited about, to get Chip back. I talked about it after he was hired. I went through all the plays per game at UCLA over the years that he was there versus how our plays per game had dipped and dipped and dipped. And I'd been frustrated by it. And here comes Chip. He's going to bring these things up. Instead, it's dropped down a play because they have said that they have intentionally been very, very deliberate and slow with the offense, which I hate. It has its time and place, but they've done it all season. I don't think that's what we're going to see against Tennessee. I think we're going to see them, at least for portions of the game, go in to a faster tempo. And I think it's going to be very beneficial to limit those substitutions on defense, tire their guys out a little more, get them on their heels like they're planning on doing to us. Also, it's going to keep the fans, who are going to be cold as ice, fired up and in the game and loud as hell. And that's important. And sometimes you ought to think about that when you're putting together a game plan. I really believe that, particularly early on in the game. One more point to make. Tennessee's road games. On the road this year, one of their road games was Vanderbilt, right? Well, Vanderbilt is in Tennessee, if you weren't familiar with where Vanderbilt is. And that is like Ohio State playing at Ohio University. A home game for Ohio State, right? Not really, but technically, yeah, it is. I guess technically, no, it's not. But yes, it is. It's their home game. If Ohio State played at Ohio University, it would be an Ohio State game. The same thing goes at Vanderbilt. That is an all Tennessee crowd. When Alabama comes there, it's an all Bama crowd. Outside of that Vanderbilt game, Tennessee only played outside of that Vanderbilt game, Tennessee only played 3 road games. 3. Oklahoma, they won 25-15. Arkansas, they lost 19-14. Georgia, they lost 31-17. So they are 1-2 on the road this year. They have not beaten a top 10 team on the road in the last 21 attempts. I don't care how many fans you got coming up in there. Like, that's great. Their fans travel well everywhere they go. Being on the road is about much more than fan support and noise. It's being out of your element. It's traveling. It's all sorts of things that just make it inherently different and more difficult playing on the road. And these guys are not good on the road. It's as simple as that. Now, the Buckeyes are still favored by 7.5 points. The number's 45.5. Most people are going Tennessee plus the points and the under. I'm going the other way. I'm going Buckeyes 28, Tennessee 20. All right, let's take it from the game and go over to the transfer portal. We're going to start with the bad news. Safety Jaden Bonsu heading to the portal. Bonsu is a kid from New Jersey that I thought was destined to be something, man. He was a nasty dog. And over the spring, we were hearing about him. He was really flashing a ton. And then when we got to the season, it was another New Jersey kid, true freshman, Jalen McClain, that was just beasting out, making a huge impact. He's going to be a dude at Ohio State. But now the Buckeyes are down another safety number when they were already trying to bring one in Dylan Thieneman, who ended up going to Oregon. So that's not great, but that's what the Buckeyes are dealing with at safety. At tackle, you're looking for 4 offensive linemen, right? They definitely want to bring in 4. They got their first one, and it's a kid that they passed on out of high school, Phillip Daniels from Minnesota. There's Phillip right there. Phillip Daniels from Princeton High School in Cincinnati. He is Paris Johnson's cousin. He ended up going to Minnesota, redshirted his first year, and then this year, he played in all 12 games, starting the final 4 games of the year at right tackle. He is 6'5", 315 pounds. He was ranked as the number 4 tackle in the transfer portal, but I honestly think that these transfer portal rankings are pretty off. They're pretty wonky. But it's a heck of a grab. It's a guy that you could have had out of high school. People are already penciling him in as a starter next year, and I love it. It's a kid from Ohio. You couldn't have you got a family connection. Couldn't be more perfect to get a transfer portal tackle like that. A kid who wanted to come to Ohio State. Like, I love it. Excellent. Good stuff. Wish you would have grabbed him out of high school. It's kind of an ironic twist, right? So Miles Walker, who was the tackle that just entered the portal from Ohio State, was essentially the guy that Ohio State took instead of taking this dude. So Miles Walker exits. We bring him back in, and he's had a year of experience up at Minnesota. It's a good swap. I like it. But that class was that was a 3-man offensive line class. Like, I don't know why you didn't just have him in the class anyway. But another guy came in and visited, another tackle, Ethan Oyanwa from Rice. And today there was a guy visiting as well. That's Ethan. Geez, man. That's Ethan O. Ethan O from Rice, big old dude, 6'6", 345. Then today visiting Retrell Perry. And Retrell Perry listed at 6'7", 323. I've also seen him listed at 6'5". So pretty big discrepancy there. Not quite sure. But he is out of like Connecticut Central or something like that. But whatever. I don't care about any of that. Get the big bodies. Get the dudes in here. They're watching the film. We're not watching it because I can't find Connecticut Central's film. As for Philip Daniels, PFF grade 62 overall, and that's not fantastic, but Josh Simmons was a 47 when he transferred in. If you're a returning viewer and you like the show, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me and give this video a like. Thanks, guys. All right, so here's the story. 6 p.m. on Tuesday, Zach Smith gives me a call and says, hey, just got done talking to Josh Pate, and he sent me a picture of you and said, who is this? And can I use a piece of his segment, a segment of his show on my show? I don't know the context. So you don't know the context? No, but I'm sure it's not bad. Now, normally this would be awesome, and it was awesome, but I didn't know what it was. And all I can think about is the last 2 shows before that phone call, I was just roasting Tennessee. And I'm like, man, I'm going to look like a fool. I'm going to be on TV on his show, the biggest college football show there is, saying like Tennessee's big feminine orange. You know what I mean? Like, I know, like for us, our little show, like, I'll do one-offs like that. And, maybe it's funny, maybe it's annoying to you, but to me, it's funny. And, but that's not the show, but that's what it's going to look like. It's just going to look like a goofy show. But I couldn't say no, obviously. Awesome opportunity. So I'm sitting down here with my son in the studio, not sitting, I'm pacing. Like we're both pacing and wondering what the hell is this going to be? Of course, it's the final segment of the show. And he starts talking about the game. And I'm like, yeah, he must be using it some other show, or he's not going to use it because there's nothing about Tennessee here. And it wasn't until he said Ross Bjork that I went, oh, shoot, not that. Now, this ruined a mission of mine. That's for sure. I had a mission, and my mission was, if I can ever get this show big enough to be able to have a conversation with Ross Bjork, I would love to talk to him about our gray sleeves and how much it means to so many of us, because I just don't feel like there's anybody pushing that has any access to him to get us back our damn sleeves. And if anybody can get it done, he can do it. Well, it's dead, guys. It's dead from me. We got to find somebody else to be the conduit on there. I was going to try, but it's over. Ross Bjork hates me, I'm sure, but it is what it is. Now, Josh Pate played my plea there, part of my plea, and he obviously agrees with that. He's very old school, like a lot of us, when it comes to traditions like that. And he even, took it a step further. And that was great. That was great because it needs to be said. It needs to be pushed back on. And he doesn't think that that's what's coming from the administration or from well, he didn't mention the media wing, which is part of my story that ties in there. At any rate, I very well could be wrong. I do want to make it clear. I don't mean that I think the administration or the team care less or are trying to minimize their efforts in the game at all. I think this is 100% about public relations and how they want us to perceive it. And I think we've heard some buzzwords like new era over and over, new era, new era, new era, new era, over and over again. And they want the message to be, guys, yes, we want to win that game, but not the end of the world. We still got the playoffs. And to me, the playoffs are an entirely separate thing. We've always had a postseason. We had a 4-team playoff. We had the BCS. And when we had the BCS, we still had the robust bowl system. We've always had a postseason. The postseason has had different, it's looked different. It's always been there. We are the ones who assign value to things. And the things we assign value to, those are the things that have meaning. Not outside forces, not the postseason changing. It's what we find value in. That is what we give meaning to. And we, collectively as Ohio State fans, chose way before we were born that game, that we were gifted 50% of the greatest rivalry in sports. We were gifted that. And to let that fade away and not pass that on to the next generation because they changed the postseason around us, wow, the shame. You should be ashamed if that actually happened on your watch. So we can't let it happen. And maybe I'm wrong that that's not the messaging. I don't think I am. But whether I was wrong or whether I was right, the message got a little further that there's many of us out here that aren't going to have it. We're not going to stand for it. So it was a big win, and it was a lot of fun to see that on there. But thanks so much for reaching out, guys. That was pretty wild. That was a pretty wild moment. And my mom was tickled pink, as she says. Love you, Mom. All right, guys, that's all for me today. I'll talk to you soon. Juckonbucks out. He needs his vote polled immediately. And I'll say, I don't care. The leader, the boss. Where is Josh Heupel? The largest humans he can find. You got Miami and Georgia and Florida State and Tennessee and Texas A&M. Kirby wants you. LSU and Ole Miss. Not even a football player, but he's 6'10", 334. Kirby said, sign me up. That's all they've got to offer when it comes to a defensive player. What could they possibly say other than, how down do you have to be for a win? Let us pay you. All they got to be is enormous. What could they possibly say? Knock the team out west. Oh, well. They'll take him if they're lowly rated, too. I'm not some guy who's some Big Ten homer. Behind that, I will never find it acceptable. I want to see it, man, because they've got nothing else to go on.
I'll tell you this, George. Tennessee gets close to half the crowd in there. Those people are going to wish they bought those tickets.